Okay, next up we have Burleson from NHM, and she's going to be talking to us about the taxidermy rhinos at NHM. So hide and seek. Oh, see. Thank you.
So hello, I'm Lauren. I'm a conservator at the Natural History Museum in London, and I'm going to talk to you about some rhinos in this very long title, but essentially about display context and historic remediations of historic interventions. So the Natural History Museum has a significant collection of large mounted taxidermy specimens, not just rhinos, but that's what I'm talking about today. Many of these have historically been on display for decades, potentially 100 years like these, in various display contexts. So two of these rhinos I will be talking about today, but this is our main hall, so you can see that they sort of get moved around. It's often reused for display, so once something is sort of prepared for an exhibition, it often gets used in multiple exhibitions over its lifetime, constantly changing. And each of these exhibitions and the display requirements coupled with the specimen's condition have different means that we need to treat them differently for conservation, even with similar species like rhinos. So this is another historic photo. This is the Mammal Hall, and that's where they all were, get moved around a little bit. Large, fully mounted specimens are unique, unusual, and irreplaceable generally. They often get used as showstopper specimens, so the aesthetics are quite important, but they are still part of the collection. Historically, importantly, the Conservation Center at NHM was not responsible for display or gallery specimens. In fact, it was known as the Paleo Conservation Unit and only dealt with earth sciences and paleontological specimens. So the display taxidermy was sadly relegated to that side. This results in a lack of recorded data about previous interventions because we had an exhibitions team looking after the galleries historically, but it wasn't part of their workflow to record what they did to the specimens. Unrecorded historic interventions, I'm talking about like material interventions on the specimens themselves, so things like overpainting, fills, commercially applied products, poorly integrated aesthetic treatments, etc. I mean, you saw some of this in the last talk as well. Because we don't have any record of these generally, the evidence we gather through them is through condition reporting, observing them in the specimens, sometimes as part of the interventive treatment. We learn more about them as well. And then sometimes anecdotal, so speaking with people, curators or people who will remember those projects saying things like, oh yeah, they used XYZ commercial filler on those type of specimens in general. But those are really hard to match up, especially with timelines. We just don't know if we don't have the record, and it's hard to verify. Right, so these are the 4 specimens. Like I said, they've been on permanent display at in the Mammals Hall for quite a long time. Those are their registration dates, so we don't know when exactly they were mounted, but at least before that time. All of them are on the IUCN Red List, so this is quite an important collection. There are 5 extant rhino specimens, and this represents 4 of them. They all have replicated horns for display. I don't know if all of them were replaced or these replicated horns were done at the time of mounting, but none of the horns are original rhino horns. All right, so case studies. I've arranged these sort of chronologically, but there will be a weird jog in the middle, so bear with me on that. But this is the first one that I'm talking about. So these are all over the course of the last 5 or so years. This is the white rhino specimen that was removed for a 3-month temporary exhibition for an artist, and it was called The Lost Rhino. The historic interventions addressed mostly for this one were external, so lots of overpainting and then base material that was not original. You can kind of see it there down at the bottom, the pink stuff, overspilled onto the hooves. There was some other remedial work done as well by my colleague, and a lot of work done to just remove it before even the treatment could begin. So there's the example of sort of the chassis. It had to be lowered down out into the colonnade. So yeah, luckily the overpainted layer came off quite easily, but it was very time consuming. So it was only done for this display angle, and then it went back on permanent display in the Mammals Hall, and that remediation continued a little bit there. Right, so here's the weird jog. We're going to talk now a little bit about skin replication, which is quite a lot of what we did for some of the other specimens. This is not on the left. This is a historic photo, but it's not one of the ones that, well, not one of the specimens that I'm speaking about. It's a different rhino in the collection, but just to show you that this is quite a common degradation pattern that we see in specimens, especially with really heavy heads that include the original horns, or replicated horns, just that tearing along the neck. And why might we want to replicate the skin? In this case, I think, so this is on the right-hand side, this is the black rhino. And this is after I removed a poorly integrated fill. And it's just quite a lot of space. It's really obvious. I mean, even if I were to do a fill and in-paint that, it's quite, I think, visually distracting to have that much of the skin missing. And especially if I were to do a like smooth fill, or a lightly textured fill. So here are the methods in this particular case study, these following. Effie's brilliant technique of molding and casting with dental silicone on the left there. These can be made more or less flexible depending on your needs. So in this particular project, we've used both cellulose powder and glass microballoons in Lasco. It's really good. You can use the actual specimen skin, so you can make it quite cohesive, but it is really time consuming. Not necessarily to take the molds and to make the molds and the casts, but cutting them apart and sort of puzzle piecing them together is really time consuming, as well as the painting in. I pre-colored these, but you do have to do some color matching in the end anyway. So then our colleague Erica developed this technique that is really quite brilliant in its simplicity, which is using the natural texture of the cellulose powder, which is like a paper clay, conservation grade paper clay kind of. And if you don't overwork it, if you just mix it with Lasco really quickly and spread it on Japanese tissue paper, it sort of looks like rhino skin anyway. So that speeds things up quite a bit and is appropriate in a lot of scenarios. This is in contrast to, like I was saying earlier, maybe more of a direct fill, which you can texture a little bit at the end, but is really time consuming to do that and maybe doesn't give you the best aesthetics. Back to the case study. So this is the Sumatran rhino. This was also on display in Mammal Hall, but was removed in 2024 for a new permanent 10-year gallery, Fixing Our Broken Planet. This specimen was also heavily overpainted, but we decided not to remove any of the paint on this one because of time. Mostly, we addressed the poorly integrated, potentially polyester resin, unclear, fills that you can see at the top there. They're really smooth and quite shiny, and there's this weird yellow drippy one as well. We did test removing them, but they wouldn't budge, and to remove them mechanically would have been quite damaging to the specimen. So we decided to cover them with that quick method, the cellulose powder and Lasco texture, which for this specimen is appropriate because the surrounding skin is sort of just that non-directional pebbly kind of rhino texture anyway. And also, this could be applied directly over the historic fill, so it didn't actually need to be applied to the specimen itself, luckily. Few other things done as well. And then lastly, so this is a case study for the three. That middle rhino is the white rhino that I spoke about in the big pink display case, back on permanent display as part of a gallery enhancement project. So not a full gallery refresh, but just sort of interim. This is ongoing, so the remediation has continued after that gallery project, including some opportunities for public outreach, both digitally and while the museum's open, working on the rhinos, answering questions from people. So that's been fun. And this has the smorgasbord of historic interventions, so including overpainting, failing fills, aesthetically poorly integrated fills, damages from the horn removal and replacement process, and base material overspill, anything and everything you could want. This is a really good example of removing historic fills that are actively causing damage. I think when you have a type of material like taxidermy, you have the organic components, although they've been fixed and changed in conjunction and sort of in pressure and stress with inorganic components, and then introducing these materials that maybe are not compatible with the skin, they can cause further damage. So this is one of the fills that Effie did, replacing and doing the molding and casting technique. I think this is done in the cellulose powder, which is really effective. You can see it's really much better integrated. It looks a lot better. It's no longer failing and lifting from the specimen. And she was able to address the instability underneath as well. This is the black rhino. So this is one that I've been working on. You can see that hole down at the bottom here, this on the left, really poorly integrated fill. It was covering about 10 centimeters of the original specimen skin on either side. So it was really overspilled, very shiny, wrong color, bad texture, and failing. There's also an interesting stratigraphy to it, I think, where clearly someone had just continued to add things to it as it failed over time. So that needed to be completely removed and readdressed. And I had decided to use the molding and casting method with my glass microballoons and Lasco to do that, which has worked really well aesthetically. I would love to have a beautiful before and after, that amazing conservation image for you, but I think in this case, maybe reality is more interesting, which is that when you work with historic specimens in a historic building, things rarely go to plan. And in this gallery in particular, it is quite susceptible to, it's an unregulated environment and quite susceptible to swings and changes in relative humidity and temperature. It rarely stays within the ranges that we'd like it to. And actually, I've done this fill on the side. It's ready to be finished and painted, and it's split again. But luckily, I can say that it's split against my fill and not the specimen skin. So at least we're winning there, whereas the previous fill was damaging the skin every time the specimen expanded and contracted. And to be honest, I think it's just going to continue. I don't think it's worth trying to constrict the skin with a repair. So my current plan is to sort of make it as a floating fill, detach it from the specimen skin and attach it only to the fill material underneath and give the specimen a bit of space to continue to expand and contract. We'll see. I'd like to compare that in time and see how that works against some of the less rigid fill materials that have been used on the other specimens. Oh, and a little bit more work that's been done there. But so I think this type of gallery work gives us a really good opportunity to readdress some of those historic fills, but also to record them, because without this work, it is sort of just that anecdotal reporting of people telling you what they think happened to things. And even if we can't connect it directly to a project or a specific remediation that happened, we can at least document it and bring up the documentation to our current standards. Yeah, like I said, I'd like to continue to monitor the fill materials and their application and see how they work, especially in fluctuating gallery environments, compare some of those more flexible and more rigid fills against each other. I'd also like to try and record that cross section and do like a timeline stratigraphy for some of the historic remediations, just because I think it would be an interesting part of the specimen's history. So yeah, thanks loads to these people, and also thanks to you for having me.
Do we have any questions? Oh, one at the back.
One's for online and one's for here. So I hope I haven't made Jen run just because I didn't hear you, but what was the actual infill? Was it just Lascaux and the cellulose powder, or did you have it on a backing?
Oh, on which one? Sorry.
The actual infill, was it just Lascaux and the cellulose powder, or was it actually on another media to make the infill?
On this specimen?
The one before, yeah.
Yeah, so there were a few things that I did on the interior of this one. There is some Japanese tissue fill. Luckily, the form underneath is plaster and it's quite stable, so I'm not concerned about the specimen stability on the interior, but the skin was quite flexible. So I did pack that out. There is some cellulose powder and Lasco. And then to fill the void, because at that point there was quite a large gap between the plaster and the skin of the specimen, I used polyester wadding just to give it a base. Then I lined that with Japanese tissue paper and then put the fill on top of that.
Yeah, I thought that Japanese tissue would be brilliant because I think it would actually give a little bit of swell and movement. But hey, perhaps having a double layer going in different directions might give it a bit more, well, just sort of support it a bit more. But I don't know. I just think that's brilliant. Looks brilliant.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, hopefully it will be brilliant. It's not yet, but
Thank you.
Any more questions? We've got one online. Are any of the treatments for both of the talks written up anywhere or plans to be published?
I'll just go first, but not yet. Hopefully, ideally, I did want to have it a little bit more completed before this, but yes, when it's all done, I think it would be an interesting comparison.
Yeah, we'll put it on the blog.
Yeah, Bethany said she'll put hers on the blog too. So, but yes, to both of those. I think we've got time for one more question if there's one from the floor. Sarah, in the front.
Hang on.
Thank you. Are there any measures that you can take to stabilize the relative humidity? I know it's on open display, so it must be difficult in order to improve the longevity of your fill.
I mean, well, theoretically, yes, there's lots of things we could do. In reality, I don't think that gallery is going to, I don't think that that's going to be possible in that particular space. For whatever reason, this gallery also seems to exacerbate what's happening in the weather outside. So it goes through these massive swings. Yeah, I think that space is not possible at this time. We'll see.
Our museum, with things being in really big cases, and we've recently bought a lot of Prosorbs to put around it, but it's nowhere near the recommended amount for the size of the case because it's huge. Oh, sorry. So, but that's not something you could do. Use
No,
Prosorb.
I mean, ideally it would be in a case with Prosorb, but historically these have always been an open display, and I don't think that there's the ability to case them. Yeah, I think that would just be quite a lot of building works and to fix that particular space, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Time for coffee. So it's back where we were earlier. Please have a look at the trade stands and please be back here. The next session starts at 11:25.
Yeah.